Hey, thank you for tuning in again. In Exodus chapter number 18, after the battle of Amalek and Israel's first, real victory, where they were participants in the fighting, there is this chapter where Moses' father-in-law comes to pay him a visit. So in verse 1, it says, Jethro, the priest of Midian, Moses' father-in-law, heard of all that God had done for Moses and for Israel, his people, how the Lord had brought Israel out of Egypt. Now, Jethro, Moses' father-in-law, had taken Zipporah, Moses' wife, after he had sent her home, along with her two sons. The name of the one was Gershom, for he said, I have been a sojourner in a foreign land. And the name of the other, Eleazar, for he said, the God of my father was my help and delivered me from the sword of Pharaoh. Jethro, Moses' father-in-law, came with his sons and his wife to Moses in the wilderness where he was encamped at the mountain of God. Well, the first thing to remember is that even though, or even while, God had called Abraham to come out and he was going to make them a special people, his own people, a nation of his own, God was still revealing himself to other people that were not the same family as Abraham. And here is one example where Jethro is worshiping the one true God, the Creator. He was the priest over the people of Midian, and that was the refuge that Moses had found when he fled from Pharaoh after killing the Egyptian. So he spent 40 years. He takes a wife and he has two sons. Now you remember when God called Moses to go back, God insisted that his sons enter into the covenant through circumcision. And his wife, from a different culture, called him a bloody groom. Now, it didn't tell us this when we read the story, but apparently Moses had sent her and the sons back home. And now Jethro comes, having heard of the great victory of Israel and the deliverance from the tyranny of Pharaoh, brings Moses' wife and sons with them and meets him at the mountain of God. This was the place, I believe, where Moses had seen the burning bush, because even there he goes, you will come to this place again. And verse number 6, and he says, and when he sent word to Moses, I, your father-in-law Jethro, am come to you with your wife and her two sons with her. Moses went out to meet his father-in-law and bowed down and kissed him, and they asked each other of their welfare, and they went into the tent. And then Moses told his father-in-law all that the Lord had done to Pharaoh and to the Egyptians for Israel's sake, all the hardship that had come upon them in the way, and how the Lord had delivered them. And Jethro rejoiced for all the good that the Lord had done to Israel, and that he had delivered them out of their hand of the Egyptians. And Jethro said, blessed be the Lord who has delivered you out of the hand of the Egyptians and out of the hand of Pharaoh, and has delivered the people from under the hand of the Egyptians. Now I know that the Lord is greater than all gods, because in this affair they dealt arrogantly with the people. And Jethro, Moses' father-in-law, brought a burnt offering and sacrifices to God. And Aaron came with all the elders of Israel to eat bread with Moses' father-in-law before God. So here he is, the father-in-law, a worshiper of God, and he acknowledges and testifies that all of the gods, the idols of Egypt, have been dealt with, have been defeated. There is no God like our God. You see, even in our present day, Around the world, there are still countries that have many idols, but even in the Western world, we have our idols. They aren't things usually where we go to temples to bow down before. But an idol is anything we bow down to serve. John tells us that we shouldn't be so much looking for the Antichrist, but the Antichrist in our lives, which are anything that distracts us or becomes a substitute for Christ. Because there is only one true God. There is only one who satisfies. There is only one who gives us everything that we need. There is one all-powerful. There is only one that can be our propitiation, that can make us righteous, that can call us beloved sons, and that is through Jesus. And so they have a great feast to celebrate this victory. Then the next day, Moses sat to judge the people, and the people stood around Moses from morning till evening. And when Moses' father-in-law saw all that he was doing for the people, he said, "What is this that you are doing for the people? Why do you sit alone and all the people stand around you from morning till evening?" And Moses said to his father-in-law, "Because the people come to me to inquire of God. And when they have a dispute, they come to me, and I decide between one person and another, and I make them known the statutes of God and his laws." Moses' father-in-law said to him, What you are doing is not good. You and the people with you will certainly wear yourselves out, for the thing is too heavy for you. You are not able to do it alone. It's easy for a leader to take the whole burden upon themselves. And it's easy for the congregation of Israel to come to Moses and put all of the burdens on him. Jethro, a worshiper of God, is observing this and saying, "This is too much. You're going to wear yourself out." In our present day, we say, burnout. And I don't think that's God's plan. And we need to listen to God's voice about what burdens are we taking on that God hasn't placed on us. And how are we equipping others to help us in the burden? So even as a pastor and a missionary, one of the things I've had to learn over the years and decades is, how do I teach and prepare a whole generation, a whole body to take on responsibility? Because the body of Christ, the church, needs more than one man, more than one person. And so part of that is the equipping of others to help and to solve problems. That leadership should be more than just one person. And so Jethro makes this recommendation. And I think it was born out of genuine concern for his son-in-law. He didn't want him to wear out. He said, "This is too heavy for you." So he says, "And now obey my voice. I will give you advice, and God be with you. You shall represent the people before God and bring their cases to God." This was the role that we would eventually see of the priest, that he intercedes for the people to God and represents the voice of God to the people. So he says, you do that. You limit yourself to that, and you shall warn them about the statutes and the laws and make them known the way in which they must walk and what they must do. Moreover, look for able men from all the people, men who fear God, who are trustworthy and hate a bribe, and place such men over the people as chiefs of thousands, of hundreds, of fifties, and of tens, and let them judge the people at all times. Every great matter they shall bring to you, but a small matter they shall decide themselves. So it will be easier for you, and they will bear the burden with you. If you do this, God will direct you, and you will be able to endure, and all this people also will go to their place in peace. So Jethro just gives him some common sense advice as a leader. Get some honest men of integrity, who can help judge over 10, and others over hundreds, and others over thousands. It's really parallel in the church when Paul is giving counsel and instruction to Timothy and Titus about who are to be leaders and deacons and elders and the bishops, and which is the same as the pastor teacher and all these different roles. He gives them the same. What are you looking for? Men of character, honest people. And so Israel becomes a little more structured. We're going to see in the days ahead that Moses takes the brunt of the burden. And he is weary and he is going to be frustrated. But this is definitely a step that begins to help him. So in verse 24, he says, so Moses listened to the voice of his father-in-law and did all that he said. And Moses chose able men out of all Israel and made them heads over the people, chiefs of thousands, of hundreds, of fifties, and tens. And they judged the people at all times. Any hard case they brought to Moses, but any small matter they decided themselves. Then Moses let his father-in-law depart, and he went away to his own country. So this interlude with Jethro is a great reminder of how God establishes, even in the church, a group of leaders who are to be spirit-filled men. The temptation in the church today is to elect people who are considered prominent to be the leaders. But the church isn't a business. And so the elders are to be men of not only integrity and good reputation, but men who are spirit-filled, who hear the voice of God and can act on the voice of God with wisdom. Otherwise, the church just becomes an organization and run like a business, and that's not a good place for it to be. So I just want to encourage you, if you're in leadership, be preparing others to help bear the burden. And if you're in the congregation, find out what is your part in serving the body to take a burden off of those with leadership responsibilities. Everyone has a part, members of the body, working for the benefit of others. Hey, you have a great day. God bless.